Welcome to the Insight Meditation community of Charlotte. All of you who came in person and those are with us from home. I'm Joy LiBethe, one of your Dharma leaders. And tonight is the last in our summer Sutta series. And that's when, and if you've been here before, you'll know that each of the Dharma leaders has the opportunity to teach on a sutta of their choice. And these suttas come from the Pali Canon, which is a vast body of scriptural narrative, which forms the doctrinal foundation of Theravada Buddhism. And that's the branch of Buddhism that insight meditation, which we practice, follows. And the Pali Canon is often referred to as the Tripitaka, which means the three baskets. And that includes the Vinaya, which is the rules for conduct for monks and nuns, and also the Abhidhamma, which is detailed analysis of investigation of mind and matter, and then the Sutta Pitaka, which includes 5 Nikayas, and that's collection or volumes, and there's more than 10,000 suttas or discourses that were delivered by the Buddha or his closest disciples. So nothing was written down at the time of the Buddha, but his followers came together soon after his death, and that was the first Buddhist council. And they defined what the Sutta Pitaka was, and they actually rehearsed that all orally. So tonight, I want to tell you a little bit about how I chose the sutta that I'm going to speak on. So yesterday, I was having some men install a shower door in my bathroom. Been waiting a couple months for it. And they started having a conversation about how in the past people took care of their elders and different generations lived together. But that nowadays it's not like that. And so the young people are more independent and don't take care of the older ones. So I started thinking about my mother-in-law. When we realized that she could no longer live alone, we hired someone, but unbeknownst to us, she fired the person. And so after we realized she had fired her, then we said, well, you have 3 choices. We can hire someone else, or we can find a facility, or you can move in with us. So she moved in with us. And that worked out really fine. But, you know, when I'm to the point where I need to be cared for, I don't want to live with my daughter and have her care for me. That's just we have different lives, and that's not something that I want. So I started thinking a lot after this yesterday, and it was also my mother-in-law's birthday. So I started, she's deceased. I started thinking about that. And that was on my mind when I found out that Thea, who was intended to lead tonight, was not feeling well and was not able to lead. So I see she's on there tonight. So I hope we all wish her a speedy recovery. So that was on my mind. And so I was thinking about caring for others, and I was thinking about caring for ourselves. And although we are an I, me, mine culture, we often don't take very good care of ourselves. And so that was the first part of my inspiration for this talk, was caring for self and others. The second reason was, I don't know if any of you have ever seen America's Got Talent, but they have all kinds of different acts that come in. And they have these ones where these gymnasts come and they climb this pole that's, I don't know, like 40 feet in the air, and they climb up. And then when they get up there, they ask their assistant, which is usually their wife or girlfriend or something, to climb up there, and then they kind of get on top with standing on the person's head with one foot. I mean, just crazy stuff they're doing up there. So, okay, so these are the 2 reasons for the talk that I chose. And you're probably thinking, what do these things have to do with each other? So tonight I'm going to talk about the Sedaka Sutta, which is also called the Bamboo Acrobat. And I like the sutta because it's brief, but it points to a lot of the different teachings of the Buddha. So I'm going to read you one translation of this. Once upon a time, monks, and this is the Buddha addressing the monks. Once upon a time, monks, a bamboo acrobat, setting himself upon his bamboo pole, addressed his assistant, Medakathailika. Come you, my dear Medakathailika. and climbing up on the bamboo pole, stand on my shoulders. Okay, master, the assistant Menakataya Lakika replied to the bamboo acrobat, and climbing up on the bamboo pole, she stood on the master's shoulders. So then the bamboo acrobat said to his assistant, Menakatha Lakia, you look after me, my dear Menakatha Lakia, and I'll look after you. Thus, with us looking after one another, guarding one another, we'll show off our craft, receive some payment, and safely climb down the bamboo pole. This being said, the assistant said to the bamboo acrobat, that will not do at all, master. You look after yourself, master, and I'll look after myself. Thus, with each of us looking after ourselves, guarding ourselves, we'll show off our craft, receive some payment, and safely climb down from the bamboo pole. That's the right way to do it. So the Buddha said, just like the assistant said to her master, I will look after myself, so you should, monks, practice the establishment of mindfulness. You should also practice the establishment of mindfulness by saying, I will look after others. Looking after oneself, one looks after others. Looking after others, one looks after oneself. And how does one look after others by looking after oneself? By practicing mindfulness, by developing it, by doing it a lot. And how does one look after oneself looking after others? By patience, by not harming, by loving kindness, by caring for others. Thus, looking after oneself, one looks after others, and looking after others, one looks after oneself. So whenever I'm reading a sutta, and for those of you who are interested in doing sutta study, you can just Google just about anything and get it if you know the name of it or the book that it came from. This is the Nikaya, the Samutta Nikaya that this came from tonight, or you could go on to look at suttacentral.net or dharmaseed.org if you want to listen to them or access the insight and find out more about suttas. But I usually like to read a few different translations because sometimes you can relate to one. So I was just looking to see if they were using the same words. And so I looked at translations by Bhikkhu Buddha and several others, but one of the things that was interesting was Thanissaro Bhikkhu translated the name of the Menakatha Lakaya, and her name translated means frying pan. So you can find out some different things looking at these different translations. So this Buddha starts out by saying, practice the establishment of mindfulness. So practicing mindfulness is why a lot of us are here tonight. That's how we at least got started in it. And he says to practice developing it and to do it a lot. And I'd say its key is that every moment that we can to be mindful. And he answers, how does one look after others? By patience, by not harming, by loving kindness, by caring, sympathy, acceptance. So this sutta includes a lot of the Buddhist teachings, metta, loving kindness, karuna practice, the paramis, patience, foundations of mindfulness, the precepts, on one of which is ahimsa, not harming, he talks about. So when I was a child, I don't know how old I was, but I remember this. I was hanging on the side of the grocery cart as my mother was going through the grocery store. And back then they had racks with magazines, and I took one off and I was reading. I don't know what I was reading, but I read that quote by John Donne, that no man is an island. You probably recall that, no man is an island of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And it goes on to say, any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. So I don't know how I was, maybe 10. And I read that and I loved it. And so I memorized it in the grocery store because we didn't have money to buy magazines. And I remember that. So I think I remember that because I thought then that caring for self is caring for others and vice versa, and that we're all connected. We aren't independent. We're part of this one fabric of life. And don't you feel enriched when you're doing a kind act for someone else? Doesn't that make you really feel good? Maybe not at times, but that's not bad or wrong. So I want to emphasize here that Buddhism is not the commandments we grew up with, most of us. And there's no word in Pali, the language used at the time of the Buddha, for the word sin. So the suttas are really trainings on how to live a life free from regret. And when practiced with body, speech, and mind, they're expressions of the power of restraint, clarity of mind, and respect for oneself and for others. They're commitments of the compassionate, wise heart that leads to freedom. So I'm going to talk a little tonight about caring for oneself. In our culture, we're really hard on ourselves. We don't always take good care of ourselves or know how to watch out for ourselves, as the Buddha says we should do. And this isn't about being perfect, but being mindful of what is occurring in your mind. That's primary. The capacity for self-reflection is the key to gaining insight and moving on this path. So look closely. See how we get caught by judgments of ourselves and others, how we're shutting down and denying our feelings in an attempt to be happy or get control of life. We often repeat that which makes us unhappy or unfulfilled. Looking for love in all the wrong places, perhaps. So to be truly present, to live in the moment, to be mindful, is to be vulnerable. So it sounds good, but it may not be so easy for us. So we need to practice what we're trained in. And as we do that, we develop more peace, more freedom, more courage to be with what is. Not just on the cushion, but in life. Mindfulness moment by moment. Practicing on the cushion is what prepares us for being able to do that in everyday life. Practice now. Practice every time you think of it. I used to like it that Thich Nhat Hanh would say, whenever you hear a bell, stop, pause, become mindful. Some people do that every time they enter in a doorway. So whatever might be a good trigger for you, have that so you stop and be mindful at the moment. I'm going to read a quote by Rodney Smith, who's a Dharma leader. He said, once we abandon the belief that there's more spiritually useful moment than the one we're in, we have embraced our life and infused it with the energy for awaken. Abandon belief that there's more spiritually useful moment than this moment right now. So we can care for ourselves in many ways, our bodies, exercise, food, meditation. I had a massage today. That was good, caring for myself. How about how we care for ourselves emotionally? Self-compassion is so important. Only to the degree that we've gotten to know our personal pain, only to the degree to which we related to our pain at all, can we begin to understand and relate to others' pain. When we know ourselves, we can come to know all human beings. Just knowing the presence of attachment, fears, aversions within the mind is mindfulness practice. We're so drawn to what's outward, pleasing our senses, that we have to reorient to focus inward. For some, that might be scary. We resist or are fearful of being truly mindful of what's going on within us, or the responsibility of watching for others outside of us. So I want to read you a poem. He's talking about fear here, but it could be any emotion that we resist. He says, we try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way, because it makes what is necessary seem monumental. It makes what is needed seem uncrossable. Yet when we stumble over the line, or are loved over the line, or in our exhaustion fall beyond our pain, what we feared was a fall to our death turns out to be the next step. Sigal Contra Rinpoche, who's Pema Chodron, some of you know of Pema Chodron, it's her teacher. He said, an intelligent heart relies on compassion born from self-reflection. The more we investigate our own mind with curiosity and love, the more we begin to approach others this way. Then natural ease and well-being arise. We feel a greater connection to theirs. What does it take to be both soft and strong, to endure uncertainty, to have faith in path and practice, to simply allow to feel what arises? Coming back to your body and mind now. Research on self-compassion shows that it really enhances well-being. It reduces depression and anxiety and boosts your happiness. We're not talking about self-indulgence or lower standards. When compassionate, you do what is healthy, not harmful for yourself. So motivate yourself with intention and encouragement, not criticism. We can't fix the pain of the world, but we can meet it with a compassionate heart and relax and breathe. And relax with the expectations of yourself and who you should be. Let go of the judgment mind. Be gentle. That's watching out for yourself, as the sutta says. So let's just do just a brief self-compassion practice. So if you just want to close your eyes for a minute, you might want to put your hand over your heart at any time. Start by picturing in your mind's eye someone who showed you compassion, maybe one time or ongoing. Even if you don't feel worthy or deserving, it doesn't matter. Their compassion for you is just as you are. Breathe with these feelings. And if you can't bring a person to mind just as you are, breathe. Think of a pet that was there for you when you were hurting. And if you can't conjure up from memory an image of another being treating you with compassion, can you feel within you those own feelings of acceptance and kindness for yourself, beyond judgment of any kind? Let this feeling be self-sustaining, natural, not coerced. Breathe with this self-compassion. Allow your whole being to be cradled, rocked. Perhaps you can feel how you treasure your own life. Guard yourself in the face of sorrow. That's done out of compassion for yourself. We can relate compassionately to what we want to push away. We have enormous space in which to live our lives. So just stay with that sense for a few moments. Come back gently, holding that nurturing of yourself. Keep with you always the intention to watch over yourself and care for yourself. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So caring for ourselves is really important. And so is caring for others. And how do we find that balance? Sometimes it seems like it's a juggling act. It begins with mindfulness of your body and your speech and your mind, but mind's the most important here because it guides the rest. Jack Kornfield says, there are two things that you're always free to do despite your circumstances: to be present and to be willing to love. Can you love someone exactly as they are? Can you love yourself exactly as you are? True compassion stems from the recognition of our interconnection with all beings. It's the willingness to be present with suffering without separating ourselves or running away or blocking. A willingness to live in the hearts of others. In Pali, the word karuna, which means compassion, is literally translated as the quivering of the heart. That spot in our heart that can soften to and be fully present for pain in others or ourselves, no matter what. Pema Chodron says, truest measure lies not in our service of those on the margins, but in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. We can't be truly mindful of ourselves or others and not experience compassion. And being truly mindful is our deep calling. So this is asking a lot of us. I'm not saying go back to watching the evening news when your heart's already breaking. You are feeling these feelings because of the deep goodness within you. So begin with mindfulness of self and the compassionate response to whatever arises within. All this suffering is not as solid as you think. There's space everywhere, only waiting for your opening. You know when you're closing the door. Even if you don't know how, set the intention to open it. Pema says, you are the sky, everything else is the weather. I want to read you a quick poem by John Wellwood called Forget About Enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now, not who you'd like to be, not the saint you're striving to become, but the being right here before you, inside you, around you, all of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out, touch in, let go. So we can practice daily acts of kindness. You know, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama said, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible, he said. I picked my email address. I have to say it was after I tried a lot of them that had my name and things and it didn't work. I picked always kindness as my email address. Not because I wanted to say that to other people, but I thought that would be a reminder to me every time I type it. But I get such a wonderful reaction. Every time I give someone that email address, they stop and they pause, and so I'm thankful for that. So we need to appreciate that we all create suffering and we all suffer. Buddhism asks us to go beyond the self, not to protect the self or perfect the self. Practice what is joyful. Rumi said, when you go to the garden, do you see roses or thorns? If you're mindful, you see them both. In the Sedaka Sutta that I read tonight, it reminded me of Thich Nhat Hanh's talking about a vision of radical interdependence, which he called interbeing, in which all beings support are in turn supported by one another. Suffering comes when we're caught in the trance of separation and forget others are like you. There's a practice called Just Like Me. So when you're feeling distant from other people, or you're looking at them and they look different, or you're judging them, you look at the person, really look at them mindfully and say, just like me, just like me. And you can practice that so that if you're a person who tends to make judgments, you know, when you're out somewhere, you can just kind of look around and silently say to yourself, just like me, as you see these different people. Father Gregory Boyle, who most of you probably have heard of him, and he works with the gangs in LA. He says, here's what we seek: a compassion that can stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. Nanjan Sumedha says, the most compassionate thing we can do for another is not trap them with our views. Mindfulness and space are a large container. Of course, we do whatever we can for people, but what is transformational is staying with life, being with it as it is. You recognize that at some point you've closed the door. You may know when it bangs shut or hear the soft click. You may become more mindful then. We can relate compassionately with everything. So it's important to develop mindfulness on the cushion. That's training for life off the cushion. The more we're mindful of the small or wonderful aspects of our lives, the more we can develop our ability to be mindful of the painful aspects. Insight meditation means to know the truth of things. Commit again and again to your mindfulness. Buddha in the Sedaka Sutta tonight says, practice the establishment of mindfulness by looking after oneself. One looks after others. By looking after others, one looks after oneself. So in the words of a wise rabbi, may the teachings fall gently into your heart. Thank you.